Okay, I don't know how clear this is going to be because I don't know what I'm trying to solve, but I'm just gonna sift through uh, FreeBSD shell source code with Acme because that's what I worked on so far. Um, or maybe I should do the ELF tools. Whatever. Let's do the shell. So the first thing to note is that Acme is extremely mouse centric. So the way you navigate through file systems and contents of a text file is through clicking on the mouse in certain combinations. So if like I want to open up this directory, I will right click and it pops up a new window within the Acme editor, and I'm going to navigate over to the shell, and to execute a command you middle click. So this is the delete command that the Acme editor understands. We'll close the window. And so we have all this source code, and if I want to find out how many lines of code there are in the shell, I can run this, and I'm going to highlight this and middle click. And okay, so it's a fairly large program, a little over 13,000 lines. And let's take a look at the main function where execution for the shell begins. Okay, so this is it. There's a lot of stuff happening. There's this set jump instruction, blah 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 blah. And let's get to something interesting. Okay, so here's a loop for parsing shit. Okay. Okay, I already read through a lot of this source code, so I know what I'm looking at. But when I first went through this, I didn't, I had to figure out, like, okay, what does this function do? And what is all this stack stuff? I need to find out where in the source code these things are defined. So I use my shell script s source for these kinds of things. So now in Acme, if I highlight this, there's two things I can do. I can search for this string in this file just by highlighting it and right-clicking. And because this is the only place it shows up in this file, it won't go anywhere. But let's see if I click something like this and right-click. So it now starts jumping around to the places in the file that it's located. Okay, so I want to find out what the definition of this is. So I'm going to cut and paste it over here. And for this, the parameters for the shell script are the text that I want to search for, and then the path that I want to search for it in. So I'm just using the current directory. And I'm going to highlight the whole thing, and again in Acme, to run the command, I middle click. And now this is where it becomes useful. Like, just to make a point, why I use this. The alternatives to things like this are like C-scope and even worse products. Or another one that I was actually a fan of back in the day called Silent Bob. And they're not as extensive as this is, because this is kind of dumb and naive, my script. My script just, sets up some grep calls in a convenient way for me to use inside Acme, and I'll point out why it's convenient in Acme. But what's it called? C-scope. I can't use C-scope with any kind of language or any kind of syntax. Like, right, it's specifically for C and I think C++. And Silent Bob supported a lot of other languages, but again, I'm dependent on whatever languages it supports. So using this, I'm not dependent on languages that only the script supports because it just naively greps the text. So there's an advantage and disadvantage to this. I can use this on anything. The disadvantage is I can't do something that Silent Bob can do, which is Silent Bob can go through all the source code and show me like a call path. Like if I want to know, like from a point in source code, like where there's a function call, I want to know what the whole history of function calls was, like to get to that point. Or I can go in the opposite direction, like look at all the function paths, like the function call paths, like the tree from a certain function. So like if I wanted to know, like, okay, what's the full like path of execution in the shell, I can look at Silent Bob. I can bring up Silent Bob and ask it for the call tree of the main function, and that would list like every execution path in the shell. This is not that smart. So anyway, this is the output from running that command, and this is where I found the command to begin with in this file down here. So if I right click on this piece of text, right, it brings me to that part of the source code. Now I want to know where this is defined, and this looks like the definition of a function in C. So if I click this, first let me point out this is in a file called parser.c, and it's on line 211. And I'm going to right click on this, and bam, it comes right up. And now I can see, I can read this code and find out what it does. And let's say now this confuses me even more. I see this thing called read token, and that looks important, which it is important, but we're not going to get into the details of the actual source. We're just going to navigate around. So first I can find out easily in Acme if this function shows up anyplace else in the current file that we have opened here. So I'm going to right click this, and I see, okay, it shows up there, 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 there. Okay, it shows up a lot of places. So I'm going to copy this, close this, and again, I want to find the definition of this function. And here's the output. Okay. I don't know how much you know about C, but because this is naive, like I said before, it won't. I can't say like search for the definition of a function, but because I know what the hell I'm looking for, I can sift through this pretty easily. Like I know these are function, well, not this one, but these down here are function declarations. So this is not what I want. This is not what I want. Like I know all this stuff is not what I want. I can easily find what I want, which looks like this. So if I go here, yeah, okay, that's exactly what I want. So here's the definition of the function, and I can just sift through the source code easily like this, rather than actually doing things like grep and giving it parameters I never remember. Oh, yeah, and one other thing I want to mention, like if I open up a terminal and I navigate over to the same source code, it's not as useful in the terminal. Like if I had to do this strictly in a terminal and not in Acme, I'd probably prefer to use cscope, because cscope provides an interface for jumping around the source code, whereas with Acme, Acme's providing the interface and the shell script's doing the work of finding what I'm looking for. But it does the same thing. I just can't jump to the lines of code that I want to in the terminal.